back, everyone. It's David with another edition of NFL Overreactions. Week 13 shifted the playoff landscape as it gave us exciting finishes, some memorable upsets, and a reminder of what makes the bad teams this year really, really bad. If you like what you see here, be sure to subscribe and follow Lingo Sports on Instagram. At number 5, we're going to start in the Windy City, where Allen Robinson is trying to Eric Bledsoe his way out of Chicago. If you're an NBA fan, you likely remember that time when Bledsoe was so miserable playing in Phoenix that he openly tweeted, "I don't want to be here," which he claims was because he was at the hair salon. Yeah, right. Either way, it worked because he ended up getting traded to the Bucks mere days later. It's clear that Robinson is doing the same and trying to get off the slow but inevitable train wreck that has been the Chicago Bears this season. Every Bears fan and their mother wants the team to extend Robinson, but he doesn't want to stick around. So what's the best way to fix that? By getting the fan base to turn on him by actively losing them games. It's late in the fourth quarter, and Mitch Trubisky, who only ever shows up for the 2 games Chicago plays against the Lions, has just coughed up the ball to give Detroit the go-ahead touchdown. Now he's got to lead a game-winning drive. Here he is on the 3rd and 5, tosses it to Robinson. He picks up 4 yards easily, but there is no way you're telling me he can't get one more. Look at all that space he's being given. A player with his IQ surely knows how to get a first down in that situation. You don't need to convince me. He stepped out on purpose. And his plan to get Bears fans to turn on him? Well, it worked. After a 5-1 start, the Bears are still on track to finish the season 5-11, and you can't blame Robinson for wanting out. He's been in the league for 7 years now, only to have his God-given talents wasted by having the likes of Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky throwing him the ball. The Bears aren't getting a real quarterback anytime soon, so he deserves to go to a team that has one now. Him joining the Packers would be downright hilarious, but personally, I'd like to see him link up with Deshaun Watson and the Texans. Number 4, Gregg Williams will go down in Jets folklore if they wind up getting Trevor Lawrence. In case you missed it, the Jets nearly took their foot off the gas in their quest to finish with the league's worst record and land one of the most exciting quarterback prospects in several years. In their back-and-forth affair with the Raiders, they went into the fourth quarter down 10, but then took the lead. They were so close to winning their first game, but then they remembered who they were and gave up a Hail Mary to preserve their winless record. All credit on this play call goes to Gregg Williams, the now former defensive coordinator who drew up a call that's never been seen since 2006. On a Hail Mary attempt, he sent 7 pass rushers on a blitz. 7! As far as deliberate tanking goes, this is a new low. And to add insult to injury, guess who the lone corner was who was tasked with covering Henry Ruggs? Wait for it. Wait for it. Lamar Jackson. You couldn't make this up. Of course, Adam Gase had to fire Williams in order to save face, but their final meeting likely consisted of them popping champagne. If the NFL actually cared about preserving its image, they would come up with some way to punish the Jets for deliberately tanking like this. But we all know that they don't. They're probably just as giddy over the prospect of Trevor Lawrence coming to the New York market. Don't be surprised if, in the coming weeks, we see some league-wide collusion to help the Jets safely reach that illustrious 0-16 mark. Number 3, lobbying up outrageous overreactions on a weekly basis like this will result in a few misses. So I've decided to be the bigger man and own up to one of my biggest mistakes yet. Kyler Murray is now a top 3 QB. Honestly, this isn't as far-fetched as when the NFL players ranked Lamar Jackson the best player in football last season. That was based on the tremendous leap he took in his sophomore year to earn MVP, and we're seeing that same leap from Kyler this year. Even if he doesn't win MVP, he'll always have the Hail Murray. What we saw from him against the Bills is enough to put him below Mahomes, but in the same tier as guys like Wilson and Rodgers. Ever since that Hail Murray, the Cardinals are 0-3 and are only a game ahead of the 49ers in their division. Kyler Murray's play has been far from inspiring. He's had 2 straight games of below 200 yards and had 2 ugly turnovers in their loss to the Rams. Now, this doesn't mean he's suddenly bad, but I definitely jumped the gun on anointing him a top 5 QB. He hasn't surpassed Deshaun Watson, who's done more with less this year, or Lamar Jackson, who, despite having a down year, has still been productive and has accomplished more than Murray to this point. That said, Kyler Murray has the pieces to be a great quarterback, and the Cardinals have the hallmarks of a great team. They're just not there yet. They're still a good team, but one that clearly peaked after the Hail Murray. To get to the next level, Cliff Kingsbury needs to grow more as a coach, and Kyler needs to cut down on his turnovers. Also, someday, and that day may never come, the Cardinals as a franchise need to start planning for life without Larry Fitzgerald. Thankfully, DeAndre Hopkins can help them significantly with that part. Number 2, no one, and I mean no one, should want to face the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs. It's wild that we're even having this conversation about them. For years now, all Browns fans have been echoing the words of Jim Mora. Playoffs? I just want to win a game! But just look at the glow-up this franchise has gone through. When they finished 0-16, it was clear that the whole team needed an upgrade. But the most important thing was finding a signal caller they could rely on, and one who could finally retire that cursed Browns QB jersey. Once they got that, the next step was finding the right head coach, especially after a disappointing 2019 season that started with such high expectations. Kevin Stefanski is the right man for the job. It was easy to criticize that hire at the beginning, especially since Robert Saleh was right there. But under Stefanski, the Browns have proven capable of winning all sorts of games. They can grind out ugly defensive contests like they did against the Eagles, or win in poor weather, as was the case against the Texans. And they can prevail in shootouts, thanks in large part to Baker, who just had the best game of his pro career. Not only that, but they've overcome all sorts of adversity to their roster. When Chubb and Hunt are in the lineup, this team is 7-1. And without Odell Beckham, they're 5-1 so far. Cue all the Browns are better without Odell hot takes. Add all that up, and you've got a recipe of a team that can cause serious damage in the playoffs and potentially put a scare into one of the top caliber AFC teams. Their defense is suspect. It's almost cost them some huge leads, but that's all part of the growing process. And even with their impressive start, they're still going to have their fair share of doubters. It also may seem like the Ravens and Steelers have their number, but they've got one more game against each of them, and will be motivated to win both of those rematches. Would you really rule out anything in 2020? And number 1, the Eagles should play Jalen Hurts the rest of the season. Doug Peterson announced that Hurts will start next week against the Saints, which was absolutely the right call. But don't go back to Wentz at the first sign of trouble. Stick with Hurts the rest of the way. What they do with their QBs beyond the season is anyone's guess, but getting a real body of work out of Hurts can help them come to a decision. And it doesn't do anyone any good seeing Carson Wentz spiral further out of control each week. That said, he picked a good year to play like shit, since he doesn't have to look over his shoulder without fans at the link. It's ironic. The Eagles played the Packers this week, a team that came under heavy fire for drafting a QB in the first round instead of giving Rodgers more help at receiver. But Devontae Adams has played like the best receiver in the league, while the Jordan Love pick has seemingly lit a fire under Rodgers, even if he doesn't care to admit it. Meanwhile, the Eagles have had a lot of misses in the draft recently. How about Jalen Reagor going just one pick before Justin Jefferson, or taking J.J. Arcega-Whiteside before DK Metcalf? The Hurts selection seems like it's had the opposite effect on Wentz as the Jordan Love pick. It's too harsh to say that Wentz is now a bust, but his career could go down as one of the greatest what-ifs, considering that 3 years ago, he was well on his way to an MVP and potential greatness before suffering that torn ACL. While it's looking more and more unlikely, the Eagles aren't out of the NFC East race just yet. But going with Hurts gives them a greater shot than continuing with Wentz, since his confidence appears to be completely shot. If Hurts ends up being everything the Eagles wanted and more, then Wentz deserves a second shot elsewhere. But if he's not, then Wentz will be even more motivated to redeem himself next year.